Hi there, welcome to this episode. Now, for better or worse, this episode is all about my little 1982 1000cc Iron Head Sportster, which I absolutely love. Now, I've had this thing about 2 years and I've been tinkering away and beavering away with it in the background for all that time. So here's a list, I hope it's not too boring, of what I've done to it so far. Now, the first thing I do when I get a project bike like this, one is get it running and see what kind of state that's in mechanically, and also give everything a check over, you know, your swing arm bearings, etc. Is that, and then also, while you're tinkering away like that, getting it running, I'm always looking at it thinking, how am I going to style it? And I've changed the styling of this thing quite a lot. But look, the first thing I did was try and fire it up. The starter motor didn't even work, so I tinkered around with it, sorted what I thought I needed to, put some fuel in it, fired it up, and it immediately coughed, bang, farted, and blew the carb off. So I thought, right, this is really going to have to go right back to basics. So since then, I've spent quite a bit of time on the carburetor. It's got a CV carb on it, which it came with, but it was poorly mounted. So I made all these mounts. Someone said the holes aren't in the middle of your bracket, but look, these are homemade out of stainless. I'm rather proud of them. Some people have criticised them. I don't really care. So anyway, that is on there, really solid now. You can shake the whole bike by the carb. It's got a new rubbers and sealing because that carb was leaking. It was sucking in air. So I've sorted that. The choke cable and the ignition mount were just hanging down this side. So I made a choke mount to put it there. Which I wanted. I saw those in catalogues and they were a lot of money, so I just made a little bracket out of aluminium, put my lucky little sixpence in there, which someone sent me in the post because they knew my birthday, and they sent me a 1962 sixpence. That's a lucky sixpence, so that's in there. It fits beautifully, just go straight in, glue it in. So I made the carb mount. There was no air filter. I bought this one just out of a catalogue. I like the style of that to go with this sort of style, overall style I'm doing. So I did that. I made an ignition mount, which is round this side, which is just the key, and it tidies up the HT lead as well. That plugs in behind it. So that was that, and that lot took me quite a lot of time. So I did that. It had already been converted to points, but I think they're all a bit clapped out and that. I'll get onto that later. And the cover was missing there as well. So, and I wanted just a plain cover. I didn't want like a Live to Ride one or whatever. I just wanted it plain. Because the whole thing with this bike for me is I'm trying to do it stripped down, lean looking. And that's just the look I like. So I put a plain cover on there. I've also made this bottom exhaust. It's mounted on the head. It's mounted at the back, and it's massively long. And there was nothing in the middle here, so I've made a nice little stainless steel mount for that. So you can already see I've been making carb mounts, exhaust mounts, ignition mounts, all out of stainless. And I've only got this tooling in here. I haven't got an amazing amount of tooling, so it's all handmade. And look, it takes me a while. I'll do my usual, make it in cardboard and then make it in stainless. So I've done all that. It had fishtails on it, which are here. And the thing was, when I did get it fired up, it was loud. I mean, it was ear-splittingly loud, so I wanted to put baffles in. So I cut these off, and I put a hole in them and a bolt that goes into the baffles. So I can bolt these back on if I want. But do you know what? I chopped them off, and I thought, I quite like that shotgun look. But I have got these. If I want to put the fishtails back on, I can. So that's a work in progress. I'll decide about that down the line. Now, speaking of volume level of these pipes, before I did anything to it, it was so loud. I mean, you wouldn't be able to overtake a police car even at the legal limit. They'd pull you over. It is that loud. So I went and bought some, where are they? I bought some 4-inch baffles. I put those in. Once I cut the fishtails off, I put them in. They didn't seem to make any difference to me whatsoever. So I went back and I want 12-inch baffles. So I've got some 12-inch ones. They're what's in it now. I'm in 12-inch. What's that? It's about down to here. And bolted them in. And I fired it up again. I still thought it was too loud. And I put some wadding in, which was a big mistake. When I fired it up, it sounded so muted, and it didn't have a bark to it. And it was an awful tone as well. It was a really horrible tone. It didn't sound like a proper Harley. It then took me 6 hours to get these baffles out because I tapped them in with wadding on, and there's nothing to get hold of them. So be aware of that when you do it. I've just found that out the hard way. 6 hours to get them out and take the wadding off. So at the moment, it's just got the 12-inch baffles with no wadding. And I haven't run it like that yet, so we'll see what that's like. So I did that. The next thing I did was, I'll put my tea there, hopefully it won't spill. It had a standard mud guard. Well, here it is, and it had the light on it. So that was down here like this. Same trick as ever. Cardboard template, draw it on the mud guard, and then I've cut it down to this kind of shape here, which I really like. And I just found that was cheap on eBay. I think that was 30 quid. Lovely polished little LED rear light, and I've had to bolt a number plate mount to it. So that's ready for the number plate when I get it registered. I've done away with the aluminium sort of mount things here that curve down the mudguard quite a long way. Well, those aren't going on. So I made some little copper inserts out of copper, 22mm copper tubing, just sliced it, and it's very malleable. Just knocked it into those. Those are a prototype actually. I'll tidy them up. They're a bit wobbly and horrible. But I just wanted to see what would that look like. So I've done that. I also have spent weeks just polishing it because it was all a bit crusty. So that's the basics there that I did. None of the brake lights were working. So I got a new front brake light switch. The rear brake had no hose and no master cylinder. So I bought this new master cylinder. I couldn't find the right one for this model. I don't think they're made anymore. Maybe someone can correct me, and they are. So a friend made me up a stainless steel adjustable linkage for the height of the pedal. So I had to get all that sorted. Then I had to put braided hoses on. The rear brake light switch was missing. So I've had to get one of those and wire all that in. And it's got a beautiful aftermarket rear caliper. Can't remember the make of it now, but it's rather lovely. So anyway, all that's been plumbed in. I also had to have a new front brake hose because I changed the handlebars. It had ape hangers on it. Some people have said to me, why have you taken the ape hangers and fishtails off? Well, I just like the way this looks now. That suits me. That's the kind of thing I build. And I'm happy with that. So I put these 4-inch, I think they're 4 or 6 inch, can't remember, pull back risers on with flat drag bars. And the reason I put them on is because originally it had massive Mickey Mouse ears, speedo and rev counter. And the high beam light, which you do need technically, I know a lot of people don't bother, I had to put a high beam warning light in, which is in with the generator and oil pressure lights here. And that's all wired in. And I wanted the speedo this side of the handlebars so that when I'm riding it, I can still see those lights. If I put I didn't want a rev counter. I just want the simplicity of a speedo. And if I put a speedo in the middle, I wouldn't be able to see those. And if I offset it on its own, that would look wrong. So I thought the only thing to do is mount it in the middle here. And I spent quite a bit of time making these mounts to mount it off this clamp here. So that's all done. It's all wired in. The speedo light, the illumination only comes on when the headlamp's on. The high beam light works. So look, I'm not the world's best at electrics, but I kind of made it up, went along, sorted it, and all that works, which I can show in a minute. My mate Mark made me these mahogany grips. I like these wooden grips. People go, aren't they really hard? Don't you need rubber or leather ones? Well, I haven't ridden this one, but all the other Harleys I've ridden with these have been lovely. So, and when your gloves are wet, they actually grip the wood. They don't slip like on sort of chrome ones. So I'm happy with that. Another thing I've done, I did the rear wheel bearings. I bought a swing arm bearing kit, which comes with a new spindle. While that was out, I painted the rear swing arm and chopped the rear mudguard. This tank came with it. I love this tank. I think it's called something like a Roadster tank. I think they're quite rare. That's 3.6 gallons, so I'll be able to go quite a way on one tank. The lads at Down and Out gave me, the front mudguard's really quite cumbersome, and I wanted this stripped back look. And that's just a later Evo mudguard. And I managed to, I've had to cut bits out of it and cut it and shut it a bit, but that's gone on lovely. And there it is. So I've done that. The other thing I've done is I've changed the oil and filter. Always do that when you get an unknown quantity. I won't leave this oil in long. I'll probably ride it 100 miles and dump it and the filter and go again just to flush any rubbish out, because I don't know what state the oil's in. Has it been contaminated by fuel? So I've done that. So that, very quickly and rapidly. Oh, the other thing, the seat. It had on it, it was quite nice, but it had that Mustang seat, you know, on here. But because I wanted that chopped rear end on it, I just wanted to put a solo saddle on. And also, this model hasn't got any footrest mounts on the swinging arm, and there's a sort of appendage that clamps on underneath. Well, I didn't want all that, so it's staying single seat. So I took that off, and I found this one just on Facebook. And I absolutely love it. It fits it really nicely. I've had to make up a different mount to mount it. It was for a later Sportster, but that's gone on lovely. So I think that's it. It's been slammed at the back. I think the shocks are shorter. I don't know. I'm not a great Sportster aficionado. I'm sure there are people out there that'll tell me, no, they're standard, but it looks lower to me. And I think now I've kind of got the look I want, and I've spent hours and hours just cleaning what I've got. So that's brought me to where I am today with it looks-wise and styling-wise. And now I'll talk you through why I've been getting excited. Right, the reason I'm getting so excited about this bike after having owned it for a couple of years is because 2 weeks ago I sent the paperwork off to the DVLA to get a logbook, which means I'll be able to ride it on the road. Which brings me to this section, because I've done all the styling roughly how I want it. I mean, there's still bits and pieces, well, quite a lot to do to get it to how I absolutely want it, but it's presentable. I like what I've done, and I'd be quite happy putting around on this thing. I can't wait. But the big issue has always been that it's run a bit like a bag of nails. So I thought, once the paperwork went in, I thought, right, now I've really got to get my act together and try and sort out why it was running, but it was just running badly. It had no power, wouldn't really pull top gear, was coughing and banging. I couldn't get it to tick over. So I thought, right, go back to basics. So the first thing I did was I did the valve clearances, because I haven't done it in the whole time I've had it. And to be honest, I've never had to take all these push rod tubes apart and do the valve clearances. My Harleys have always had hydraulic tappets, so I've never had to get involved. So I thought, right, let's sit down and do the valve clearances. So I got on YouTube, looked at a couple of really helpful videos, and I've set the valve clearances. 2, as it turned out, the inlets were mega tight. You couldn't even turn the tubes when the engine was in the right place. And the exhaust ones were baggy loose. Now, I know you're meant to have the exhaust ones a little bit loose because they get hotter, but I mean, these were ridiculously loose. Anyway, so I set the valve clearances just so the tubes spin nicely in my fingers with no binding and no detectable free play. So that's been done. By the way, I haven't run this yet. This is going to be the first firing up of it since I've done all this. The other thing was, it's always run really, really rich. Especially now because I've cured the inlet manifold leak. I wonder if it was jetted with an inlet manifold leak, and when I cured that, that made it run rich. So look, I've had a few other carbs lying around. It's got one of these CVs on it. I had these anyway. So I stripped these down, I took all the jets out, and then I went on a forum in America, the XL forum, and that was really helpful because this is a known conversion. This CV carb on this bike isn't standard. But it's a kind of known upgrade in inverted commas to do to it. There was inquiries there about what jet sizes to use. And I may have got this wrong because I looked it up a little while ago. But I think it said start with a 42 pilot and a 165 main. Well, when I took the carb apart, it had a 185 main and a 48 pilot. So I've got a 42, so I've put that in. And I didn't have a 165, I've got a 170 that I think came out of an 883 I had years ago. So I put the 170 in, and I had a couple of sizes in between as well. So I've got a range of jets to try and help me out here. So I ultrasonically cleaned the carb again, set the float height, checked I'm happy with everything, and put a new pilot and main jet in of what I'm hoping is roughly the right size. We will see in a minute. So I did that, and the other thing, and I think this was the problem that was the main issue, I was convinced the timing was out. And I went on YouTube and looked how to set points on an Iron Head Sportster, and all of them say, put this line that's in the hole here, when you turn the crank, a line comes in, and that's where to time it. But when I was watching those videos, one guy went, this is the advance mark. And I stuck a screwdriver in the front cylinder plug hole, and it was top dead. It wasn't advanced. And I thought, well, that doesn't tally. And then suddenly it clicked. I think I know what's going on. This bike is, I think, the first year of electronic ignition, and they put different timing marks on the crank. And the 40-degree advance mark on the front cylinder is a dot. So what I've done now is, Katie Davison of Crazy K's Customs, a while ago, she gave me a new set of points, backing plate, condenser, and mechanical advance. So I put that in. It's got a new set of points, and I've timed it on this, what I think is the correct timing mark now. You have to advance this advanced mechanism, and the points should just be opening as that's fully advanced. So I've set it like that, which means, if I'm right, it was quite a few degrees out. So now hopefully the timing is there or thereabouts. It'll be good enough to get it to run and hopefully tick over. I mean, this thing wouldn't even tick over. It was coughing and banging and shooting flames out. The first time I fired it up, it blew the carb off. Well, hopefully now I've cured that, and let's get it fired up and see how it goes. I am excited because hopefully this thing is rideable. I'll probably have to dial it in down the line properly, but if it will just tick over, that would be helpful. Right, this is genuinely the first time I've fired this thing up after doing all that work trying to sort out the running issues, and I just hope it doesn't spit back and be really horrible. I hope that timing thing, I hope I've got it right. So here we go, let's turn the fuel on. See if it, give it a couple of those. Ignition on. Choke. That is a lot better. It wouldn't tick over like that before. See what I mean about it being loud? That's with 12-inch baffles in. It's quite a lot of choke. But that's better than it was. It wouldn't do that before. Let's hope the clutch works. Happy days. I can't believe that. That's fantastic. That's a lot better than it's ever been. Probably still needs a little bit of dialing in. It feels a little bit lean under acceleration, but we've got a basic starting point now to go from. Listen to that, ticks over lovely. Now look, for me, this has been a long road. It's been aches and pains along the way, but I am absolutely over the moon with that. That ticks over lovely. Once it's warmed up, I thought it was a bit lean to begin with, but when it was warm, it seemed all right. I am a very happy man. I can't wait for that logbook to arrive, and then I can take it on a proper spin down the road and get it properly dialed in. But it's just happy days. That has literally made my year. So look, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe because it all helps.